Hello, welcome to the August 22nd, 2023 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the livestream today. If you have not attended a livestream before, how it works is you can submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de, or you can simply ask questions in the live chat field. When asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase that you're running, so if it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro. That information is helpful. Also, which version number, if it's 10, 10.5, 11, or 12, and which operating system. That information is often very helpful for me to get an accurate response to your question. We will probably, at some point, I will, as I'm looking at the questions already, I'm behind. So if you don't see an immediate response to your question after typing it in, if we could refrain from asking questions repeatedly, that would be helpful. That way, will enable us to answer more questions in our time, so I don't have to read the same question over and over again. So we'll go through all the questions chronologically as asked. So if we could avoid that, that would be wonderful. Also, if we should have an index of all topics covered in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field. So if you wanted to navigate to specific topics, you could go there. And if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered on previous live streams, you could go to clubcubase@steinberg.de. You could go to, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that website, so you could search over 27,000 different topics. We also want to give special thanks to Agent K and Jazz Dude, who serve as moderators. They're not Steinberg employees. They really do this for the goodness of their hearts and to make it a better community. And also we'll give special thanks to Jazz Dude for his work with the Cubase Nation Discord. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, which is the United States distributor for Steinberg products. And I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria. If you are watching live, or even if you're watching afterwards, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. It's always fascinating to see people from all over the world joining. And with that, we will go ahead and begin. All right, so we had a question, and this was asked almost 3.5 hours, or many hours ago, 3:25 a.m. So you see question. Hi, Greg. Do you know when Cubase will officially support the 12th generation Intel CPU as per now the Steinberg page says it's not supported? So I think it's supported. It's just not going to support it's not optimized for the hybrid CPUs. So if it is set up for where you have like two different types of processing cores, one is like an efficiency core versus one that's more of a heavy duty processing core. It's not set up to take advantage fully of that. So I know that the Steinberg team is working on it, but there's still a lot of stuff that has to get sorted out with that to make sure that it's working. But a lot of people will just go into their BIOS and just turn off the efficiency cores, the slower cores. Okay, so we see a question from Learn from Steven. Hi, Greg. I can see MIDI activity in a corner. I can record and play back Halion instrument track. Can't see or hear activity on actual instrument. No activity indicator showing on instrument. Please help. So I'm not sure. So it seems like you're able to, if we have a Halion Sonic instrument here, I'm going to just add one from scratch. And I will make sure that we have an actual sound loaded. So let's say if I come over here, we'll just get to our all right, so if we want to so if you see MIDI activity in the lower, sorry, I had my son put a toy on my MIDI controller. But if we see MIDI activity here as we hit the keys, we could see that. So it seems like you're able to see the MIDI activity there, and you're able to see and record the data. So let's go ahead and I'll just record enable this track. And as we hit record, just see where. So I will. All right, so now we come here and we could see that this is recorded, and then it seems like, but you can't hear activity on the actual instrument. No activity indicator showing on the instrument. Please help. All right, so right now I want to make sure that this MIDI channel is aligned to a particular MIDI channel here. So if we play, we can see the MIDI activity going here. Now, if you're not hearing anything, and if it's where you're just kind of playing the particular sound here, it could be that maybe you're playing a sound that is a slot is selected where there's no particular sound. So if I go to channel 2 here, and let's load up a sound on channel 2. So it could be that now as we play back, we're going to hear what is in channel 1, because this is outputting to channel 1. If I switch this to MIDI channel 2, we'll now switch to the FM lab instrument. So make sure that you have, and as you play the particular keyboard, you'll see kind of what instrument or what sound slot is selected. You can see directly here. And make sure that you don't have another sound slot selected that maybe has no sound loaded up. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, we see a question from David Ross. Hey Greg, Nuendo 12 nudge to hit point only seems to move the playhead. If I then use cut tail hotkey, it cuts from the cursor, which isn't synced to the hit point. Is there any way to change this behavior? Okay, so let's say if I have a loop here, so we see nudge to hit point only seems to move the playhead. So when we do let's say we have different, as we look at this, we can see that we will have different hit points throughout the project. And if I wanted to move the playhead to the different hit points, I think it's going to be Alt or Option plus the letter N. So let me just get the right modifier key. So as I navigate here, this is intended to navigate. So I'm not sure if that's the nudge that you're speaking of. So it says nudge to hit point only seems to move the playhead. If I then use cut tail hotkey, it cuts from the cursor, which isn't synced to the hit point. So if I come here, let's say this is synced to my hit points based on my sample editing function. So I'll go to my hit points, and then if we choose, we adjust our threshold down. So now as we navigate the hit points, and we could adjust our threshold down even lower to catch some more, so that we can just navigate accordingly like this. So as we do this, let's say I wanted to cut head or cut tail from this particular hit point. So at that point, let's say that's where my cursor is. I will come over to, let's say we'll go to the range, and then I'll cut head. So that will cut the beginning until that point. And let's say if I wanted to cut tail, that will base it on the cursor position, but we're navigating to the different hit points again via Alt or Option plus N for next or B for back. But that seems to be functioning correctly to me, but let me know if it's doing something differently. One thing that a lot of people may not be as aware of is, let's say if we're here and we're listening to, if we wanted to pick a different point and we wanted that to sync, so let's say if I have my snap off, so I hit J, and let's say I want like this point to be the sync point, we could go to audio, select the event, go to audio, and then we'll say snap point to cursor. And now this snap point, once we enable snap again, that's what's used. So if you don't want to move, the playhead itself, what you can do now is as you hold down Command or Control and the left and right arrows, we can just snap based on that particular snap point that we've set. So once you've moved it, instead of the beginning of the file, the portion of the file where you designated the snap point to be, and then you could just simply move that accordingly like that. So let me know if that's helpful, but it seems to be kind of working as I would expect, David. All right, so we see, hi Greg, possible to change the MIDI with or without the VST if you import audio, if you can't buy one. So if it's a rendered audio file, you can't necessarily, if it's like, let's say a piano part, you can't necessarily turn that into MIDI and play back from another virtual instrument. I mean, if it's a monophonic part, like kicks or snares or bass lines, you could take that and in Very Audio convert it to MIDI, and then have it play back through any MIDI device. But I'm afraid I may be misunderstanding your question overall. All right. Okay, so we see from Rakesh Desai, says, my can't detect default audio interface. I have to select every time when we reopen Cubase 12. Please help. I updated drivers. I reinstall everything. So I don't know if you're on Mac or PC, but if your default, I'm not sure if you're setting the default from kind of the operating system side, which would be completely independent, on Windows or Mac, completely independent than what you have in Cubase. So, what you do is make sure that you come here to your studio menu to studio setup. We will select the audio system, and then you could see your audio interface here. If that audio interface is present and activated and turned on when you start Cubase again, then it will be selected for you. You may get a choice saying, okay, it's looking for an audio interface if you start Cubase without your interface connected or turned on or enabled. At that point, you'll get a message saying, hey, we're looking for an audio device. Where do you want us to send audio out to? But, the operating system, default, audio system is completely independent of what we have for Cubase. Because, many times you'll have the operating system for system sounds and beeps and warnings, and, your audio interface for Cubase set up for working solely, with the audio interface that your Cubase environment is working for. All right, so we see Mazda LBC says, hi folks, have fun. And he has a question. What's the best way to output a sidechain signal to a hardware compressor? So what I would do is create, it's probably going to be a mono output, or it could be a stereo output. I would go into your studio setup. And if you wanted to sidechain with an external hardware compressor, we need to actually send this out. So let's go to your audio connections. We'll go to outputs, and let's add, I'm going to add a mono bus here, and this could be stereo if needed. And you would need to have additional outputs, and I'll just call this output sidechain output. Okay, so now when I go to add an audio track, what I would want to do if I wanted to send this source, like this track, whatever source is on it, to trigger the sidechain input, I would now go to my sends. Let's get to our sends here, and we'll say let's go to our sidechain output, and now this signal is feeding, and we want to take, I should mention this, so this sidechain output, we want this to actually go directly to the output where the sidechain for the compressor is. So we, if you have 4 outputs, it may be output 3 that's then going to feed the sidechain. So at this point, we send this track as kind of like our key input, go to the sends, and now we're going to send this out to the output port that we've defined in our audio connections. And this physical connection is going to be for the sidechain input on your hardware compressor. So that's how you would probably get it set up. All right, so we have Roland Stuff saying, hi, Greg, and all those aboard today's live stream from southern Britland, where summer has started for 1 week only. So, and always wonderful to see Uno Memento, and he's like number 14 from Finland. So if you do, if you do learn a new tip or trick, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the like button, and that enables us to continue to do these live streams. All right, so we see from 1172 Thomas, who asks, and of course my chat field just jumped on me. So the question is, why is my sound glitching when CPU is at 50% and RAM at 40%? I write film music, so I have lots of VSTs. I set up a buffer size of 2048 maximum and turn constrained delay compensation on. So, realize that your CPU performance and your RAM performance, basically, is not really indicative of your audio performance. So, realize that it could be like a lot of things may be kind of choking out. So let's say if we go to a particular instrument, so let's say if we go to Halion Sonic here, and if you're doing a lot of orchestral stuff, you may want to just simply, you don't indicate how much RAM you have in your system. But like a lot of the instruments, you could come over here and make sure that one, you could have multi-core support active if your instrument does that. You could also come over here and just say we're going to have maximum how much is going to be loaded up in advance. So if you have 128 gigs of RAM, you probably don't need 1.2 megabytes. You don't need 1200 megabytes of RAM. For this one particular instrument, if it could use a lot more. Realize that a lot of other things that could be causing glitching is your video display drivers. It could be your network driver. So if you run a utility, if you're on Windows platform, there's a great utility from Resplendence called Latency Mon. So Latency MON, and that could point out if you have a basic, part of your computer that's interrupting your audio performance, and that often happens. So you may, all of a sudden everything is working fine, and then your video display driver decides to go out and take a look and do something that interrupts your audio performance. So often that will be the cause of a lot of problems in situations that you describe. All right, so we have music, I guess it's Cow or Cuckoo, just Omar from France saying hi, so glad you could join us again. Great to see you on the live stream. We see Benny from Sweden, we have Patrick Becker saying hello, Matt Elston from London, always wonderful to see Jazz Dude. Okay, so we see just clarification, says MIDI prom above is for Cubase 10.5 AI. So, just make sure, if when you're doing this, if we don't, see if you click this keyboard, if you're getting MIDI information when you hit the controller, it seems like it's recording okay. One other thing that it could be just on the outset is go to preferences. And if you maybe have done this, let's say you go to editing to MIDI. Or we'll just go to MIDI here. Make sure that you have MIDI through active. And that will take your MIDI input and make sure that it's being kind of sent through to the device. But, check to see, okay, we have MIDI communication here. And you could also hit Alt or Option plus the letter K, which would bring up like a computer keyboard. See if you have MIDI communication there. So if you don't have MIDI communication here, but you have it here, then that's going to be a MIDI in problem. You could see if the track is, make sure that the track is record enabled. Without that, it's saying ignore incoming MIDI data once this is monitored or record enabled. That tells the MIDI data to be redirected to this track, and make sure that you could see in Halion Sonic that you could see the MIDI in, out, and that the channels are matched up directly there. And if so you could see if you're getting MIDI communication, and also see if you're getting MIDI communication directly from the selected slot by clicking on the keyboard. If you could let us know that would be great. And you can kind of trace the MIDI workflow. Okay, so we see from Omar, hi Greg, Cubase 12 Pro Mac, when select our armor track to VST, it begins to play sound even if the project is stopped without touching anything. Reset MIDI, something happened, but I don't know what. So check, just out of curiosity, so if you, as soon as you arm a track, make sure, try to see what happens if you set this, go to MIDI inserts and make sure you don't have any MIDI inserts on that particular track. Now, also what it could be, and I remember we kind of discussed this, I think maybe on Friday's live stream, that as we are going through this, you'll see all MIDI inputs. So one thing to kind of check is if you have maybe a MIDI controller. So if we go to your studio menu to studio setup, you may have like a Mackie control or a generic remote, something along these lines. So we'll come over and say, okay, let's, if we added just a quick generic remote or quick keys, make sure that you don't have any of your remote controls set for all MIDI inputs. We want these to be set for the specific input and output port and not all MIDI inputs. So maybe it is your MIDI controller. So if you hit if you're selecting tracks, maybe that is sending MIDI messages to your device. And you could, just take a look and maybe instead of for that particular MIDI track, choosing all MIDI inputs, if you choose not connected, see if you still have data, and that would, if you still have data and it's chosen to be not connected, at that point it's going to be something maybe on the track itself, or try set it directly to your MIDI controller input and not to all MIDI inputs, and see if that changes the behavior. All right, so we see when Groove Agent walkthrough. So, there's lots of tutorials I've done on Groove Agent, but if you have like specific questions, I mean, we could probably spend like an hour and a half, 2 hours just on Groove Agent. But if you have a specific question on Groove Agent, we'd be happy to answer it for you. All right. So we see, hello friends, I have Cubase 11 and problem pruning contact. So I'm not sure if it's playing contact or what you're trying to do. Maybe if you give a little more details, it'd be appreciated. I may be able to help you out. All right, so we see, can somebody please repeat or tell me the name of the website that has all the information? So I think it's probably going to be, the one that we mentioned before was the cubaseindex.com, and then you could search through all 27,000 plus topics that we've covered on the live stream. All right, so you see from Ted Springman, hi Greg, I think the Quarter plugin is a fantastic tool for harmonic creativity. Could you please review it for those unfamiliar? All right, so let's say if I wanted to just play a particular, so let's say I'm not a keyboard player like myself and I don't want to, learn, I understand music harmony, but I'm a bass player, I'm just a dumb bass player. So I don't have great keyboard skills. So what you could do is go to the Chord MIDI plugin, and what you're able to do now is to come over here, and you could always kind of start with different presets for this. So let's say, okay, I wanted to do chord menu, so let's say just a song builder, and what we could do is just have different keys that will now play as we hit different chords. I hit one MIDI note and we could now experiment with different chords. And if you wanted to get kind of an idea of what is going on with this, I can just hit record and now I could So I just played single notes, and what we could do now is just record. So I'll just jump back here. Say, okay, let's record. So I play a single note, and now the chords can automatically be generated as if I was a great keyboard player. And there's great functions if you wanted to do more jazz chords. So if you don't have great keyboard skills, you could use the Chord plugin to really kind of unleash a lot of great harmonic activity. All right, so we have Eric B saying hello to everyone in community. All right, so we see Chris Hallam. Greg, what's the furthest you've seen someone take the score editor in Cubase for actual engraving? I know Dorico is the best tool for this, but how far can you actually take Cubase's editor? So I know people that do, charts for, I know people have done charts for Broadway shows, so there's, and lead sheets, a lot of film stuff that's been done kind of entirely in the Cubase score editor. So obviously Dorico is going to have more of an engraver's touch, but I think Cubase has a legacy of being able to kind of take your interpreted, played in data with the appearance quantization functions and turn it into a legible score very quickly. It's, I think Dorico and the Cubase score editor, while there's obviously overlap, kind of have different perspectives of approaches. So I would say that if you were composing, if your perspective was I'm a composer sitting with a blank staff and I'm composing, that Dorico is a wonderful solution and workflow for that mentality. If you're someone that wants to take your sequences and get them quickly into notation, without having to have a entirely separate process, then Cubase would work well. But we have lots of people doing pretty extensive things with the built-in stuff within Cubase, but obviously the Dorico stuff is fantastic as well. All right, so we see question from Tommy C. Hi Greg, for some reason I can't find the preference to restart at left locator after stopping. I basically want to restart at left locator every time I hit the space bar. Thanks, buddy. So I think you could just, there's a preference for, so let's say I take this drum loop here, and let's say I have my left locator around that. So one of the things that you could do is just, and let me see if there's just a quick, so there's a preference for, like, if we stop, that the playhead will stop exactly, if we're using the space bar, that we could, just immediately, I'll just move this over. So as we play and I hit the space bar, that the preference for that you may be thinking of is whether you want, when you hit this space bar, because the space bar is kind of an on-off, binary 0-1 play stop mode, that if I wanted to stop in its current position, or if I wanted to go back to the start position. So now if we go to our preferences and go to transport, we could now say return to start position on stop. So now if I start from my left locator and I hit the space bar, it goes right back to the left locator. Now if you have a numeric keypad, you could just hit 1 on the keyboard to automatically go directly to the left locator. And let me just see if there is let me just look under if there's a key command for automatically play from left locator. Yeah, so I mean, if you hit 1 and then play, regardless of whatever preference it is. But if you're starting from the left locator all the time, all you'd have to do, so it's the preference is that it's either playing from where you stopped it onward or going back to the previous spot. So if you play the first time from the left locator, now every time once you get a preferences to transport, you'll see return to start position on stop. As soon as that is turned on, that no matter what I do, I hit the space bar, it's always going to go back to the left locator because that's where I started playing from. So, if it was, let's say, stopped, and we're here and we play, it'll start playing directly from there, but you could always just hit the 1 key on your numeric keypad and play from the left locator directly like that. All right, so we have a question. Is it possible to make the mixer and the rack separate from each other? If so, can you explain how to do it? Thank you in advance. So currently, the mixer will always have the faders as part of the mixer. So they're not really decoupled from each other. So even if we go to like a full screen mixer and we had a number of tracks, they're always still going to have the faders and not necessarily. So we can't, we can hide the racks themselves, but each of the mixers will show the faders. So, and depending on your screen resolution, some people will make all the faders very, very small and have the racks very large, so it's not as annoying. But every time you go to a mixer view, unless you're in, where we see the inserts and sends in the lower zone, it's always going to show the faders in the mix console. All right, so we see value just sending all the love for all kinds of music from Vienna. So it seems like an appropriate city to do that. All right, so we see from Mark Madsen, hi Greg, please explain using a VST Connect and VST Connect Performer session with step-by-step instructions from each end. So I don't have my secondary computer in the room now, but really what you would want to do is go to VST Connect SE. All right. So, and then, really all you'd, to kind of start off, we will just come over here and you want to log in, and you could basically, search for your particular friend. I don't have a machine to log into or to log on with, but you could see a list of friends, or you could actually get, a basic code for your particular session. So you're going to search for your friend that you're recording. So the person that you're first off to start, the person that you're recording would get VST Connect Performer software. So once they create their My Steinberg account, they have their credentials loaded. At this point, you would basically find that particular person, and then once you're there, and if you just say you want to start off with, when you go to VST Cloud, so there's a VST Connect Pro, which is sold separately. This will allow you to record MIDI information as well as up to 16 tracks, and VST Connect SE allows you to do up to 2 tracks at once. So at this point, we could do this. You would see the person here. You could, it's going to set up once you do the create VST Connect, it's going to create everything that you need in the control room, load up the VST Connect plugin. You could see the audio system for the particular person in the mixer. So as long as, you could choose their audio interface. So if they're kind of a novice technology person, as long as they have like an audio interface, at this point you could see them on the webcam. You're able to, communicate directly with them using the control room. So you could have a talkback microphone, so you could talk to them with your talkback mic. So that's basically connecting a microphone into your audio interface. And at that point, you just hit record, and what happens is when you hit play, the audio signal gets sent directly to them. They hear it in time, and then their signal is sent back with the transport of the audio, and it's recorded directly into your system. If you want, I could have it set up for Friday's live stream. If you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de, I'd be happy to take a look at it and have my second computer set up for Friday's live stream to show it in more detail. But that's kind of the basic idea with that. All right. All right, so we see from Mike Weiser, question, would Steinberg consider adding a photo import feature either in the inserts or notes section? Would be nice for instrument, pedal, or rack recalls. So you can do this already. So if we go to like our full screen mixer, so we'll come over here, or when you're in a particular channel, you'll see that you could have notepad. So we come over here, But if we're in kind of the setup window, we want to make sure that we have pictures enabled. So at this point, we could just say, you could have pictures here, and while you think, okay, it's all, and they're coincidentally all Yamaha instruments, but you could change the picture images here. But there's also a user picture, so that you could take a picture of how the amplifier is set up and have that particular picture. So if you wanted to put a user picture of your particular instrument, you could just come over here and have that particular instrument set for the particular track. And then that way you could have the user pictures kind of part of the track. It doesn't blow up as large as you may want, but you could see the particular settings on the track right there using kind of the picture. So in the mixer, you want to just go to the setup and make sure that you have pictures turned on. So. All right, wonderful to see Capped Energy music from outside Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. All right. Okay, so we see maybe a follow-up question. It says, hello friends, I have Cubase 11 and problem pruning contact. And then it's and it says I have card Yamaha. So if you could let me know, what exact your problem is, be happy to kind of help you get started or try to get you sorted out. All right, so we have a question from Darcy. Hi, Greg from the UK. Greg, is it possible to have 10 samples on the same track and be able to spread them evenly with 1 to 3 seconds of silence between each sample for within a couple of clicks? So yeah, there's a great function for this. So let me come over to, I'll just put a number of tracks here. And we'll put these all on one track. So let's say we have a number of different events, samples here, as you can see. So if I want to select all the events and they're all on the same track, we want to go to Edit. And then we'll go under Functions and we'll see Set Spacer Between Events. And I'll just say, okay, let's put 3 seconds and hit OK. And now we have 3 seconds of space between all the events. So once again, select the events that are all kind of lined up on the tracks, come to Edit, to Functions, Set Spacer Between Selected Events, and type in your value you want and hit OK. So let me know if that's easy enough for you, Darcy. All right, so we see from Grant Slauson, when I try to add a track preset to multiple audio tracks at the same time in Nuendo 12, it'll only show me 3 presets available. Presets only show when I have a single track selected. So, there's a multi-track preset. So, if you're applying a track preset, it's going to be done individually to particular tracks. And you could have multi-track presets, and a multi-track preset is set up where if I have like a studio drum set where, I have these 12 microphones set up on my studio drum kit and it's completely dialed in and I want to go to another session, I could just drag a multi-track preset across and all 12 tracks of my drum set will be set up. So it's not really intended to take one setting a track of a track preset and apply it to multiple tracks. It's intended for having a true multi-track preset. So that's kind of the difference between it, but you may have to just simply come over and just drag your track presets over. And you could also start from a particular template. So if you wanted to go to presets, to track presets, to audio, you could just drag over track presets, kind of just like, directly onto particular tracks that you want as well. So that's kind of the distinction Grant. A multi-track preset is set up for, having multiple tracks together, like, studio piano, studio drum kit, etc. All right, so we see question. Hello, I have an Army UFX interface and the Yamaha DM3. Can I somehow use the two together in Cubase? There are two different ASIO drivers. An idea. Thank you so much. So yeah, they will be two separate audio interfaces, so they're not going to necessarily, work, incredibly smoothly together. But what you could use is the DM3. So it is kind of duplicative. So we'll be kind of duplicating the same functionality. But you can use the DM3 as a control surface for the, for Nuendo when you're, or for in Cubase rather, while the Army is used. But a lot of people would use, like often you're buying a mixer so that you could take your different sources in and have your 16 channels of input and be able to output that directly to your computer. And so realize that, it's kind of designed, for clocking purposes, so that the two, different, so that you have one device. So there is going to be a lot of overlap there, but you could, I don't think the DM3 has any ADAT expansion, and I don't think, I'm not sure if the Army has Dante. I'm not sure if the Dante versions of the DM3 are shipping yet, but if they were both Dante based, then you could have both of the systems working together. It's one of the cool things of Dante. Always wonderful to see Lawrence Koch from Rhode Island. I was just thinking of you. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law are going there to Block Island, flying into Providence, where my mother-in-law grew up. All right, always great to see Tiago checking in from Brazil. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see from Ted Springman, hi Greg, I'll be doing a lot of work with custom loops. So to follow project tempo, I only need to add tempo to file and pool and set to musical mode. So yeah, that would be all that you would need to do. So if we go into your pool window, and that's just Control Command plus the letter P, that's an easy way of doing it. Make sure that you have the correct origin tempo, and then just put it into musical mode. And then as you drag and drop it into Cubase, all the files will magically follow the tempo value that you have in Cubase. That's all you have to do. All right, so we see question, how to get an audio event to slow down while there's another that keeps the same speed in the project. So, if you want it to, slow down, so I'm not sure if you wanted to just slow down. So let's say we'll do a new project here. We'll give this a try. So let's... All right, so we'll take this, and I'll just go ahead and we'll duplicate this. So say I want to have two files, and I'm just going to make this into a separate audio file. All right, so we have two files here. So if I just take this file here, so right now they're playing together at the same time. All right, but let's say I want to duplicate this. I'll hit Control or Command plus D, and this time I want to take this file, and if I want to do sizing applies time stretch, I could come over to this particular file and let's say, okay, I want this. Let me just only select. Let's see if they're grouped. Okay, so I could now just kind of take this particular file, and then we could switch this mode here to just sizing applies time stretch. I could drag that out, and you don't necessarily have to do it so extreme. So let's say if I come here, I'll just set my snap off. So now the file will this file will continue to kind of play in time, and this one will just kind of slow down. So if we just solo this one, come here, so you could just kind of stretch it out. And sorry, we'll just solo and we hear how this one will just kind of stretch out. So you could just take different parts of it and kind of stretch it using the sizing applies time stretching tool, and then one file will be stretched and the other one won't. All right. All right, so we see from Samir Shah, how to export stems for drums, which includes filters, EQ, dynamics. Okay, so let's come over here and okay, so let's say we have our project here. And I want to take all my drums and let's put, I'll just put a compressor across every channel here. Just enable quick link. All right, and let's put an envelope shaper. All right, so I have compression and an envelope shaper and all the drums. And I'll apply a quick EQ to all the drums. So now every drum track that I go through will have the bright EQ. So if I wanted to incorporate all these into stems, all you'd have to do now is say we want to export audio mixdown. We want to do multiple, so we'll select multiple. Then I could say, okay, let's select all of my tracks. So we'll say all my drums here. And on the effects, what we want to do is to include inserts and channel strip. So at this point, I'll do just a quick export audio mixdown. And let me just put it into, I'll import it directly back into the project itself. Sorry, so we'll get export audio mixdown, and we'll choose to create new audio tracks. So again, I will come over here. And now all of my drum tracks will be rendered with the particular drum processing. So if I wanted to just come here to the snare, so you hear the compression that was added. So versus coming over, so I'll come here, let's bypass all the processing. So now at this point, if we just turn off the processing, so you could hear how that was just burned on. So really all you have to do is, as we go to export audio mixdown, on effects, choose inserts and strip if you want to include the effects ends or the master. You know, if you had like processing on the master bus, you could have the master selected there as well. Okay. All right, so we see question, when I put multiple tracks into a group and apply processing to the group track itself, why might it not apply to the tracks within that group? So if we were doing, so let's say I want to take all my drums here and I'll put them into a group and we'll put a flanger on the group. All right, so I'm going to select my drums here. And let's send it to a group channel. Okay, so we'll call this our drum bus. Okay, so as we play, I want to go to my group channel. Let's get to the inserts. And we'll just quickly go to... All right, so now what's happening is none of the tracks themselves have the flanger. The tracks are being sent to this particular group, and this group has the flanger on it. So the individual parts don't have the processing, but the processing is going on at on the group itself. So if you're, just reread this. So it's not going to apply it to the tracks themselves. It's just applying. So the audio is being sent to this group, and this group now has the processing on it. So these individual tracks still don't have the same processing. So as soon as I turn off this particular insert, it's going to sound the same because the effects weren't applied to the individual components. It's just as the audio is going into this bus that the processing is going on. So that's why you don't see it necessarily on or hear it on the individual files. It's only when it's going to be played back through the group. Let me know if that makes sense. Always wonderful to see John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Thanks for joining us. And we have Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. Always wonderful to see you. All right, so we see 1172 Thomas. It says, thank you for the information, Greg. Hope it was helpful. All right, we see Michael Teams has already started with virtual ice cream distribution. So we see from Peter Wick, hi Greg, question for Cubase 12 Pro. Is automation ASIO buffer size dependent and MIDI CC is not? So no, they're not really, neither, automation. So if the automation, there's a setting that was introduced in Cubase 12, so the CC automation is sample accurate. If we go to the audio system in the studio setup, we could say volume automation. It used to be in I think Cubase 11, it was set up to 8 samples for volume automation, but the automation for audio and MIDI can both be set down to the sample level. So, but if it's, and it depends, the MIDI CC will be set to the sample level if you're using virtual instruments. If you're using external MIDI, then it's not going to be anywhere near sample accurate. Just the nature of MIDI itself in the non-software world. Okay, so we have a question from RJ. Can you explain expression map in Cubase? I'm trying to arrange orchestral styled music. Okay. So a lot of times what happens with sampled instruments, especially orchestral instruments, is what happens is you could have a particular sample where it's going, just see if I have one particular project here I was thinking of. See if I still have it in my recent. Here we go. All right, so many times when you want to emulate a orchestral piece, an orchestral instrument, they're going to have many different styles applying. So let's say if we look at a cello part here. Now, we may want this cello to play back, instead of just staccato. Let's say we want it to be pizzicato. So they've gone through the sample companies, or marcato, sustain, legato. And you can see just in this particular cello sample, they've sampled all of these different articulations for the instruments. So let's say, okay, for this particular piece, we may want to do staccato. And then when it plays longer notes, the cellist would probably play more legato on a longer passage. So you may want to switch back and forth between the different samples. So what people would have to do previously is have a different track for each of these samples and have 3 notes on, the staccato track, 3 notes on a pizzicato track, 4 measures on a legato, and then constantly go back and forth. And so that gets a little silly after a while. So what we could do is have expression maps, and most of the orchestral instruments will already come with expression maps. If you have a Halion based instrument, that will automatically be able to generate. So if we come over here to our articulation, so I'm going to go to my expression map and we'll just say import key switches. And at this point, we can now see all the available articulations in this particular instrument. So let's say I want to start off with staccato. And then let's say this phrase I want to be pizzicato, just for those notes. And then as we come back here, I want this to go back to, let's say, back to staccato. So instead of having to switch between different tracks, so let's say maybe I want these particular notes here to have, different articulations. So we could take the expression map, and the expression map sends the MIDI information off in a MIDI note, that would say, start playing this type of cello sample, play this cello sample, play this cello sample. So the articulation maps and the expression maps allow you to handle all the different articulation switchings that could be, often used in different orchestral libraries, so you could have a more realistic portrayal of an instrument. So you're not having to work between 7 different tracks. You have one track and then have the key switches automatically work with you to make it easier and more realistic sound. Great. All right, so we see Peter Wick just says, why is the Club Cubase so much more welcoming and friendly than the official Cubase forum? Are there plans to replace or school the current mods by Club Cubasers / Greg? So, you know, I think there's I peruse on the forums periodically. I don't do it a lot, and I see a lot of questions on the you know, I think the format is different as well, that we have the ability to kind of show a solution where sometimes, you know, there's, you know, if you're just kind of writing text back and forth and sending messages, it could be, you know, it's harder to misinterpret, you know, people's intentions when they're writing. Sometimes people don't leave particular information, and here, you know, obviously Steinberg supports this particular form, so, you know, this is, you know, what Steinberg is offering if you want kind of a more interactive approach where you could see your solution. So, but I you know, I think we'll have some discussions when I'll be going to Germany in a couple weeks. I'll be there in about 2 weeks from today. Looking forward to being in Hamburg. Always wonderful to see Razel from Denmark. Thanks for joining us today. All right, and we have Corey Levine joining from Nashville, just saying thanks for all you do. So you're welcome, and thank you for joining the thank you for joining and being a member of the live stream. All right. All right, so we see from Ted Springman, hi Greg, in Halion, how can I mask factory presets and view only my presets? All right, so if we're in an instrument like Halion, so let's say we have our Halion here and we go to load, you know, one way to do it is just to, if you're in Media Bay, you could just look at user presets, and you could say, okay, let's get to VST instruments, and now you'll only see your VST instrument presets. So you're not going to see anything else. So that's why when we go to Media Bay at the root level, you could just say, let's go to user presets, to VST instrument presets, and then you're not seeing any factory presets, but only your particular instrument preset. So that's why they're kind of decoupled. So we know that there's lots of people, you know, like a lot of like really heavy duty synth people. Like I know, like at Stevie Wonder's camp, you know, if there's a new keyboard that comes out, they make sure to wipe every factory preset, and so that every sound they do is fresh and unique. And a lot of people do that, and that's a way to do it, is just to navigate strictly to user presets and load them up from there, Ted. All right, so we see from M. Sully, question, is it possible to have multiple tracks open inside the editors, like a VST instrument, and an audio track opened in the main editor to see how parts are lined up in time? So yeah, you could do that. So let's just come over. You know, so the MIDI editors and audio editors will be kind of two separate, distinctive elements, but there is kind of, if you want to do it on the main project window, so let's say I wanted to look at, you know, how my vocal and this particular piano part is lining up. So if you hit like Control or Command plus Shift and the letter I for in-place editor, just on the project window, you could, you know, obviously zoom in down to the sample level, and let's say I'll just hide my lower zone for now. But this way I could see my particular MIDI events and the audio and do editing on them both simultaneously. If you wanted to see, and you could hit, so say we just come over here, double click in the bottom, you can close. Or if you wanted to, look at multiple MIDI parts together, you can say, okay, how's this, and let's say this part. And if I hit Control or Command E, I could see all those parts, and we could actually colorize by part, so we can see different multiple MIDI events together right there. And for audio, we could do the vast majority of all your sample editing right on the main project window as well. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right, so you see a comment from Grant Slauson, says, thanks, Greg, that helps a lot. All right, so we see wonderful to see Best Korean Jesus on. It says control room tips and tricks video answered 2 questions I had. Thank you, Greg. All right. All right. All right, so we see Soren from Sweden says he's listening but cooking food now, and he already attacked the like buttons. So that's good. And we have Filter Freak, just says only 3 days till Friday, so that's great. All right, so we see Ted Springman saying, I wouldn't think a software company is given to superstitions of a pending version 13, but perhaps they could have a little fun and nickname it Zombie Voodoo Beast the 13th. I think that is the actual working title. How did you know? Just kidding. Anyway, so we'll see what the next version number is. All right, so we see Darcy just says, cheers, Greg. You are the Yoda of Cubase. I'm just glad to be able to help people. So. All right, so we see Learn with Steven says, where can I view this live stream later? I'm at work. We'll be at the Cubase link you provided and that I made a favorite. So all you have to do is just go to the, this same exact link that you got to this video will take you right back. Usually takes about a half hour after the live stream ends for all the YouTube stuff to get populated. But if you go to youtube.com/Cubase and then just click on the live tab, you can see hundreds of different live streams available. So they're all available like shortly after the live stream ends. All right, so Patrick Maynaville, great to see you on from India. Says, when everything is set like signature track and chord track and marker track, if I want to insert 4 bars in between the track, Control-Shift-E, marker tracks will move with the tracks, like I want to insert gap. All right, so let me just come over here. I'll just do a quick new project, get all the things lined up. So let's say we have a signature track. I think we have a marker track. Okay, chord track. All right, so I'll just populate some data here. All right, so we have okay, I'll drop some markers in. All right, let me duplicate these. Okay, so let's say I want to insert. So I'm just going to select 4 bars, and I'm just going to hold down. I'll just do this with a sample as well. All right, so let's say starting at measure 7, I wanted to import 4 bars. So I'm going to hold down Control. And we will now just come over here, go to Range, and let's insert silence. And that will, all right, let me make sure. Sometimes this, let's try this one more time, make sure I have everything here selected. So as soon as we do that, then everything is kind of automatically just done like that. So just try just to select whatever you want to add the silence to, and I often use the range selection tool, and then come over to function, or just go to range and then insert silence, which is like the Command Shift E. So let me know if that works for you, Patrick. Great to see you on the live stream. All right. Wonderful to see Brian Sawyer from Beulahville, North Carolina, with a massive population of 945. Always great to see you on. All right, we have the wonderful Steve McRae on from Atlanta. Wonderful keyboard player. Everyone could Google all the groups and people he's played with. Just a wonderful musician. I like watching your live from the steakhouse videos on Facebook, Steve. Thank you for joining us. All right, so we have clarification about the errant from Omar. Says there's no MIDI plugin. It's not only one single track, but all tracks armed or selected. I have MIDI controllers and generic remote are set to their own MIDI channel. So what happens if, so is there anything do you see MIDI activity on the transport bar here? Like, do you see anything coming in from the MIDI controller that is doing it? And if you want to, like, just share a project with me, just send a quick project that it's doing it on, or like a quick video. You could share it with me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. So all right, so we see Nexus just says Joe from Rochester here. So great to see you on, Joe. Says if you haven't already, VST Bass Amp and VST Amp Rack are amazing. Everyone needs to check them out. And I know Joe knows his guitar stuff really well. And I've always been a huge fan of the VST Bass Amp as well, and got a lot of people turned on. So if you haven't had a chance to really experiment with those particular plugins, don't, like a lot of the Steinberg plugins, Steinberg was the first company that did like a guitar amp simulator, going back almost 30 years now, about 28 years. But we can go to distortion, check out the VST bass amp. I'm an Ampeg snob, and that one kind of dials it in really well. And also under distortion, the VST amp rack, and there's lots of great options in these two plugins, so don't discount them. I can remember showing it to, let me just clear my throat. I remember showing this to Beyonce's guitar tech, and he's just like, why does that just sound more like an amp than every other modeling thing to me? So these are really good. Check those out, and thanks for joining us on the live stream, Joe. Glad you can make it today, and hope you're well. Always wonderful to see Sable Winters. Glad you can make it. right, and got yours. Just saying hey to everyone. Glad you can make it. So we see from Sable, does Cubase 12 Pro have SSL features? It's hard to say what an SSL feature is. I mean, it's going to have, it doesn't mimic an SSL console specifically. A lot of the automation paradigms that you would see on classic SSL consoles would be incorporated, such as a lot of the different automation modes for touch and auto latch, crossover. A lot of those are kind of paradigms that have been kind of pioneered originally by SSL that have found their way into workflows for mixing. So all right, so we have Garong Syrup checking in from Burma. So I think you're our first attendee from Burma. Thank you for joining us and saying hi. And we hope to see you on many more live streams. All right, so we see that Captain Energy Music as the heat is let up just a little bit in Pennsylvania. So it was noticeably better today compared to yesterday. All right. So you got yours, just says, so who is itching for a new Cubase? Take my money. I just want some new cool features. So I'm sure the guys at Steinberg are working hard for you. And Sable says she's still learning Cubase 12. So I'm still learning Cubase 1. So. All right, so we have Acoustic Beats, just sending love from India. Thanks for being on the live stream today. Michael Teams wants everyone to whack the like button. All right, so Nick is running late, and his punishment is he has hit the like button, so all is forgiven. So everyone likes Nick. So we're so glad you could join us today. All right, so we have David M. just checking in from Liverpool. Glad that you can make it today. All right. All right, so we see a question, mix console in the lower zone. Is it possible to switch between faders, inserts, and sends using keys? All right, so let me just go to a different project here. Okay, so let's say we have a lot of different tracks here in our mix console. All right, so if we wanted to switch between our faders, inserts, and sends, it's going to be just the page up and page down buttons. Once you're in the lower zone, so page up, page down. I didn't know that until I created an unnecessarily complicated workspace, but yeah, just a page up and page down. Keys on your computer keyboard will allow you to switch between faders to inserts to sends and go back and forth like so. All right, so we see Blue Java says, hi Greg, my dongle seems to have stopped working today. What would you recommend? A lot of things work without the dongle, but I still have a few items not transitioned. So, check to see if sometimes maybe it's not being recognized by the computer and the dongle is still working. Sometimes, so take the USB-E licenser. If you have a secondary computer, connect it and see if it lights up. If it lights up, you're in good shape, and you probably may just have to reinstall the e-licenser software or connect it to a different USB port on your particular computer. So if you do that, everything is fine. The worst case scenario is if the USB e-licenser doesn't light up, doesn't function, if it's registered, you could send an email to the Steinberg support in Germany, and they're able to take the licenses off your dongle if you purchase a new e-licenser key, and then transfer those licenses to your new e-licenser key. So, so try to see if it's going to actually, if it actually connects. If you connect it to another device that has power, if it lights up, that means it's probably a pretty good chance that you're fine. But connected to a different computer, try reinstalling the e-licenser, and if it, and that often could make the USB key wake up. And sorry that happened to you, Blue Java. All right. So you got your, just says page up and page down. Love it. Been looking for that on the lower zone. Nice. It's one of those things that I learned on a live stream from someone else, which happens a lot. All right. So we have Wabi Tube just saying hi. Thanks for joining us. All right. So we see from Acoustic Beats, is that possible? Like my main tempo is 60. I want to change the tempo of a particular track, MIDI track, to 120. All right. So let's say in this project here, we'll just listen to it. Did you say? All right. I'm going to duplicate this MIDI track here just for fun. All right, so if I want to take the tempo of, a particular MIDI track, there's a couple of ways of doing it. One is I could say, like, let's say our tempo here is 91 beats a minute. You wished it all away. So let's say if I want my tempo of my piano part here to be 182 beats a minute. So I could change everything here in my MIDI to 182. So now if we listen to our piano. So what I want to do now is I'm going to give this a try. Let's lock this particular track. And then I'm going to change it back to my original tempo of 91. So let's see. Okay, let me try locking it and putting it into. All right, so let's say I take this, we're going to lock it and then take it out of musical mode. And then let's go back to 91 beats a minute. So now that it's locked and it's not in musical mode, so not the best in this musical context, but again, you could select a track. In MIDI tracks will, by default kind of copy, double the tempo, lock it, and take it out of musical mode. And then that will, you may not, so just take it out of musical mode once you do that. And then that particular track will play back at twice the speed. So let me know if that works for you. It's from Acoustic Beats. All right, so we have a question from Value. His question is how to deactivate Cubase 12 on a PC you don't have access to. So if you go into your to the Steinberg website, all right, and let's go to log into your My Steinberg. All right, and then you could see kind of your show your download, show your Steinberg licensing products, and then you could actually kind of see which machines are, in here you could kind of see like what machines, but around in here you could see which machines it's activated on, and then you could deactivate it here. And so maybe under account controls, let me see, that's probably not it, but so if you look under here, like under your products, deactivate licenses on unavailable computers, and then you could deactivate it yourself, so you could have your 3 licenses wherever you need it. So if your computer died, it's in the shop, and you think someone may be doing something unauthorized with your license, just choose to deactivate license on unavailable computers. So just do it right there. All right. So Corey Levine asks, Greg, can a MIDI piano track have random quantizing ranging from 70 to 80% from the first measure to the last for the piece, or have a more human feel to it? Yeah. So let's say if I want to, I'll just remove this nonsensical edit that I did merely for demonstration purposes. All right. So let's say we look at this piano part here. If we look at this, so let's say I'll make everything here like super quantized. So let's say I'll just make it all 16ths and do kind of a heavy-handed quantizing. All right. So if we're in the quantized panel, one of the things that you could do is just, again, there's different ranges. So, one of the things you could do is like an interactive, like an IQ. So let's say, if I, at this point, wanted to, let's say before, if everything was like, before we heavily quantize it. So let's say, the beat starts right here at this line. Now, if we have interactive quantizing on, I could just say, let's make this, and it's set to 80%. So right now, as I quantize, instead of all the notes shifting to be directly on the beat, it's just going to move it 80% closer to the beat. So just kind of that space will move 80% closer to the beat without actually getting there. Now, if everything is like super heavily quantized, and you're trying to make it a bit more human, so I'll just take this off. All right, so we'll say now everything is, let me just, get rid of this, sorry. All right, let me just put this back to where we were. All right, so let's say I take this, and now everything is going to be super. Sorry, let me just take this part here, and I'm going to select all the notes within the piano editor, and now everything is heavy. If we come over here, let's put our click on, and let's go to like our MIDI modifiers. And if you don't see MIDI modifiers, right click. And then we could say, let's randomize our position, and let's just choose like 10. So when we go to look at our MIDI data, all right, so we just kind of put in, so everything is like super heavy quantized. And within just the MIDI modifiers, I had random start positions. And again, just to do that, come over to like double click on the MIDI event, go to MIDI modifiers again if it's not visible, randomize your velocity or the position. Okay. So again, just come over here and on the MIDI modifiers, I'll make sure I get it right. So we're going to, our random target is our position. And now if I want to see how this plays out, I can go to my MIDI menu. And then if we wanted to just come over to MIDI and we could just kind of freeze the MIDI modifiers. So I'll just kind of select the event here and freeze the MIDI modifiers. And now what that does is it's going to take our MIDI modifiers that we had and embed those changes. So where everything was perfectly on beat, we can see that it's just going to randomly kind of place some of the notes so that they're not all perfectly on beat. So you could do like little randomizing stuff like that. So it feels more human. So if it feels very machine-like, you know, try just to come over here and randomize the position, and then you could have that more human and more musical. All right. All right, so we see Eric asks, is there any reason that it's not possible to have a full complete mixer in the lower zone? Because, you know, I mean, most of the time if you have a full complete mixer, the full complete mixer can, you know, take more space, you know, like can take the entire, you know, mix, can take the entire screen. So at a certain point, if you wanted to, you know, have the complete mixer available, it's, you know, you could, you know, many people will run it on a separate monitor. But, you know, if you wanted to see the full mix screen instead of having being kind of a subset of features, which is kind of here for convenience, like while you're working, you want to do quick automation, you want to add a plugin, you want to tweak a send. So all these functions are available. And then if you want to do kind of more granular levels of mixing, that's when you can go into the full screen where you can see, you know, all of your different metering options, meter bridge, different EQ curves that are available, and see everything all laid out. So, you know, it's like when you have kind of in, you know, an allotted areas, you know, sometimes we have people that, you know, have a single screen or they're running on laptops and they want to be able to have as much functionality available within their system so that they could quickly get access to different things. So, and because the full mixer can, you know, take a screen twice as large as what we're seeing on the full screen mixer when you start, you know, exposing all the different racks, that, you know, it's not practical to have it within like this space, you know, here where you could quickly have access to stuff. All right. All right, so we see Bass Erocious, and he just says page up and page out. Wow, thanks. Learn something new every time I tune in. So that's great. That's why we do these. And love your name, Bass Erocious, as a bass player. So. All right, so we see Michael Teams is granted John Costigan in Kenosha just 1 gallon of twisted peanut butter crunch ice cream. All right, so we see all right. So WabiTube asks, is it possible to make a 3/4 arpeggio with arpeggios? So let's give it a shot. right, so let's try on that. I'll just make it a 3/4 meter. Okay, we'll come here. Let's go to our MIDI inserts. All right, so let's say now. And let's go ahead and just make it eighth notes so it could be a little more obvious. Okay, and let's go ahead and just record the output. And I'll switch it to just playing up. All right. So I think, the arpeggio is maybe not. So let's say this one is just going to do eighth notes, I believe. So we'll look at it in the full screen editor here. All right, so after we took our little break, so it looks like it's still kind of in groupings of 4. But let's see but I mean, it's still eighth notes that kind of work. But let's see if we go to our Apache SX, if we could set the number of steps. But I mean, it's, generally the arpeggios are going to work for like eighth notes or 16th notes, and they would still work within 4/4 or 3/4. I guess you could, in the Apache SX, you could take a 3/4 sequence in. If you were doing it in Beat Designer, here we could set the number of steps from 16 to 12 to see if there's anything like that we could see if there's any. Yeah, so it may just do eighths and 16th notes, and it may not necessarily, the patterns may not necessarily correlate to a 3/4 meter, but I don't see any steps, like number of steps that we could take to adjust, but I mean, still works musically with that. So, but you could always use kind of Beat Agent, or Beat Designer rather, for that. All right, so let me find my spot. Okay, wonderful to see Brianna from Youngstown, Ohio. Great to see you on. Missed having you on. All right. All right, we have Peter from Montreal. Just trusting everyone's having an amazing week so far. All right. All right, so we have Bren Hawkins says, hi, Bren from Somerset, New Jersey. I have Cubase 12 Pro. How can I get my purchased plugins to populate to my other computers I have on main studio computer, but I have laptop in bedroom also. So I'm not sure, Bren, which plugins that you have. If it's if it's the Steinberg plugins and which ones they are. So some of the plugins, most of them have migrated to the new Steinberg licensing. So you may see vouchers, if you have, Halion 7 and higher, Groove Agent, Pad Shop, Retrolog, they've all kind of migrated over. So if it's on Steinberg licensing, all you would need to do is when you go to your Steinberg Activation Manager, just log in on your secondary computer and be able to just simply activate it. And you could have the licenses activated on 3 different machines. So at that point, you could just choose to activate it if it's going to be USB e-licenser based for the licensing. What you would need to do is to just move the USB e-licenser key, and if it's third-party plugins, they're probably going to have a different scheme, but maybe something similar to the licensing there. So you could run that across multiple computers. But if you let me know which purchased plugins that you have, I'd be happy to help you. But most of the Halion content, most of the Groove Agent content, and the instruments that we sell are just about all migrated directly to the Steinberg licensing, so you can run across 3 different computers. All right, we see Peter in Montreal has gotten 1 gallon of perfect vanilla bean ice cream. All right. So we see from Brianna, she asks, hi, I found a few vouchers related to Steinberg licensing. What's the question? All right. So when you have a voucher, what it means is that you could migrate that license from an e-licenser based system to the Steinberg licensing. So when you come over here, you'll go to, let's say, your steinberg.net, again, where we were earlier. And we'll come over to, so when you see vouchers, you may just come over here and you could redeem vouchers. And basically what that's going to do is to take the license and migrate it from your USB e-licenser to the new Steinberg licensing, which kind of adds a lot of benefits, being able to access it across 3 different computers simultaneously. So you may see a lot of the older, some of the older sound libraries, instruments, that will now be working across the new system. So it allows you to take an existing e-licenser based product and move it from the e-licenser to the brand new Steinberg licensing. All right, so John Costigan bought an on-sale laptop with Windows 11 and says someone should shoot him now. So good luck with your new laptop. It's always fun to get a new laptop, though. All right, so we see you got just says, do you have any recommendations for video format for playback in Cubase, which is the most efficient? I ask because I'm always seeking to keep CPU load to minimum, leaving room for VST processes. So when you go to, just pop over and you can check out the supported formats. So I just Google video support and Steinberg products, and here you can see unlike, audio files that kind of play in everything, with video files. Let me just jump back. Sorry. Hello, welcome to the August 18th. Sorry, let me just. Club Cubase live stream. My name is Greg Undo, and I'll be the host of the live stream today. Don't need to watch my own live stream again. Sorry about that. All right, so I'll just do this again. So just Google video support in Steinberg products, and then here you could see the containers matching up with the codec. So, and any of those should work. Basically you could think of, the more compression that it's doing is the more work that it's going to do to kind of decompress that file. So a larger video size, while it may seem counterintuitive, like that's going to take more system strain, that maybe has less system strain because it's not trying to compress and decompress that particular file. All right. We have a question from David Aspinall. Do you have any recommendations for video format to playback in Cubase, which is the most efficient? Try low res MP4, so if you're going to do MP4, probably H263, H264 would be the best ones for that. So, but again, you could refer to this, so just Google video support in Steinberg products. All right, so we see from David M, who asks, hi Greg, I use Spectral Layers most days. The tools can stop working, i.e. on unmixed instruments and vocals. The tools can work when I drag to tracks. Today the tools work fine. Any ideas? So let me just come over. We'll take just a quick look. I think I may have something that's kind of already... See, just look for a particular project here. All right, so let's say if I'm here, like I have this one kind of pre-done already. So let's say, so if I wanted to, so it could be that make sure that something that could happen sometimes. So let's. Like you might have to select the particular layer here. So let's say if I have this layer selected and I want to do editing, so try to make sure that you have the particular layer selected. Sometimes the selection may make a difference, but usually whatever kind of layer that you're on, that you could. So let's say. So but you could, so make sure that it's not like just a selection on a particular. So let's say as we come over here, so like here I have just that one selection. So but check and make sure like you don't have like one layer that's soloed between the different layers there. And, so just kind of be cognizant that you might be editing on one layer when, perhaps another layer is selected. All right. All right, so we just see I want to render MIDI instrument track to audio mono. Please teach me. Okay, so let's come over. Let's do a quick. All right, so realize that when you go to render an instrument, if your instrument has mono outputs, that it will render it as a mono output, but probably your instrument is set up for a stereo output. So I think if we come over, so let's say we want to do just add an instrument track. So let's say we want to do like a synth bass part. Okay, notice. All right, so let's say if we want to all right, so let's say we have that my lovely composition. All right, so when this is going out, this is, as we're listening to it, it is in stereo. So the thinking is that it should maintain the same signal path that you're hearing. But I'm going to let's try to send this to a mono group. Okay, so we're going to say group channel 2 selected, and let's try sending it to a mono group so that we can turn the stereo output to a mono out. And now as we listen to it, all right, and let's see if we do a render in place, if this comes out as mono or stereo. So we'll get to our render settings. I want to do complete signal path. All right, so it's rendered as stereo, but so again, it's going to be following kind of the path, but let's add a group. I'm going to add a mono track, and mono audio track, and set the group as our input. And then I'll just hit record on this. Then it's just going to show up as mono. So that's what you could do, but realize that the instrument that you're hearing is in stereo, so it could change the overall sound of the instrument when you render it. And the intention of the rendering is to have it sound identical to what the instrument was originally playing back. All right, so I'm just seeing, all right, seeing kind of some other stuff in other languages, which I'm ignorant of, sorry. Okay. All right, so we see Nick is going out for a quick walk because it's a lovely evening. Sounds good. Hopefully you can make it back before the end of the live stream because we like having you on. All right, so we have Dwight Cunningham just says, hello from the Bahamas. Greg, this DC. Can you show me how to resize the main mix console in the lower zone? So if you want, you see this little white line here. So I'm just going to move that, and you could move it up and down. So let me just add a number of other audio tracks. Okay, so if we want to resize it vertically, drag up and down. So you want to just grab this, so you'll see it kind of turn into like a little plus symbol with vertical arrows. And then once the mouse is in that position, we can make it much larger. And if we wanted to zoom, if we have the mix console in our lower zone, we could just hit G and H to zoom in horizontally. And to kind of make it larger vertically, just move that straight up. So let me know if that's going to help, Dwight. And it's nice to connect with you on LinkedIn this morning. Thanks for being on the live stream. All right, Michael Teams wants people to smash the like button. All right, so we see Raj just says, hi Greg, greetings from Canada. He says, I think an Arpeggio 5 MIDI insert, when selected in step size and length of quarter triplet or eighth note triplets, it's playing in 3/4. So it'll, the beat will still, so let's say if we come to this MIDI track here, and I will put this into, so even if we're in 3/4, so I'll add a signature track. I think it's still going to play triplets on top of the, on the beats. So it's, all right, so let's say we come here, and I'll just turn on the click track, and I'll go to this. Let's get to our MIDI inserts, and we'll do like quarter note triplets for our pace. So I still think it's going to be quarter note triplets, but still in 3/4. So it's still playing like 3 notes over 2 beats, but it doesn't necessarily make it into 3/4. But it will work rhythmically with either way. But thanks for the thought, Raj. Always so wonderful to see Gareth on. Glad you can make it. Checking in from Spain. All right, so we see Jan, and we see test number 5 from Jan. So we hope that, so we can see that test, Jan. All right, so we see from DL, hi Greg, is there a plan in the next version to add a hold mode? I think this is a very basic feature. So let me know what you mean by hold mode, if it's like arpeggiators, if it's MIDI, if it's audio. Maybe if you could expand and explain to me what hold mode is. Maybe it's something that we already do. If not, we could, I'd be happy to kind of, okay, so we see arpeggiator hold mode. So it means, if you, we just come over here, let's say, it might be just I guess if with the hold mode, I see with the arpeggiator, like if we let go of the keys, that the arpeggiator stops. But let me just check something here real quick, which I think kind of makes sense. So let's say if we go, just make sure I don't have. Just choose this to not connect it, and we'll see if. But I think also, maybe not in the arpeggiator, but if we go to, let's check just to see if the step designer has this. Just okay, so let's say while it's playing. So with Step Designer MIDI plugin, you could just, so let's say if we come over here while this is playing, this way you don't have to hold the keys down, but you could kind of just program kind of your own arpeggiator. And I guess if you're in Step Designer here, we could make it 12. So if you're doing like a 3/4 asked earlier, you could make it 12 steps here to do an arpeggiator. But so in 3/4 you could use like the Step Designer, but now as soon as I hit play, I don't have to play any MIDI. That the Step Designer will just automatically play So if you wanted like a hold mode where you just kind of hit play, and let's say I want this to be in 3/4, here I could set this to, I'll just start with a brand new one, brand new instance. But if I wanted this to be like, and go to the Step Designer, let's make it 12 steps, and I want this to be, so now as I play back, so, or if we wanted this to be, you know, set to quarter notes, so you could just kind of come over here. So if you wanted arpeggios in 3/4, you could just come over and use the Step Designer. Or if you wanted to be in hold mode where you don't have to hold the keys down, the Step Designer can do that as well. All right. All right, so David M wants Michael Teams and John Costigan to smash the like button and John's new laptop. So Might be just a little hint of jealousy in a new laptop purchase. All right. All right, so we see Robert Higgins says, hi Greg, Jazz Dude, saw you on another site a couple days ago. So, not sure which one it was, but I do go on other websites. So, but I had, I know he got some weird comments, maybe taken down from a tutorial video I did that was, I think, released yesterday. Which I appreciate, Jazz Dude. Okay, Gareth wants people drag the like. All right, so the Heartbreak Time Machine is hit the like buttons, and we see Abu Bakar smashed it, so thank you for that. All right, so we see Blue Java says Dongle lit up on another computer, switched it to a different port on original computer, and all is well. Thank you, Greg. So it's good when it's a nice, easy solution like that. So you got to fix it yourself. So you get to be the genius. You can impress your significant other. All right, so let's see. I think we're at the end of questions. Let's see if there's any more that come in. If not, we'll get to some of the questions that were sent in advance. Give it another couple seconds, and we'll migrate over to some mailed in questions. All right, I'll just go ahead and migrate over to mailed in questions. Let me get to that document. Thank you for all the great questions. Again, you could always mail questions in advance to Club Cubase at steinberg.de. All right, so we have a question. Is there a way to have Cubase freeze all tracks automatically when closing the project? So there isn't a setting to freeze all tracks. A lot of people may choose to freeze all tracks before the project, and you could select multiple tracks. And so let's say if I came here, let me just duplicate this particular track. So if I come and we move that, that we could, if we have all of our tracks, and we go to edit, you could choose to render in place, all or freeze the selected tracks. But it's not going to do it automatically like when you close, and that could be, I think, really annoying for a lot of people. Where if you're trying to close something, maybe shut your computer down, that you don't want it to render files for 5 or 10 minutes on a larger project, that you want your computer to shut down. But you could always do that before actually, shutting down the project. You could choose to render all the files, but it's not automatically triggered by closing a particular project. If there have been changes made in a project that haven't been saved, you'll get a message saying, do you want to, discard the project without saving? You'll get a prompt for that, but it's not automatically going to, as you close the file, render the files and then close. Okay, so we see a question. When utilizing the Export Audio Mixdown menu and navigating to file location, specifically the setup naming scheme, there are multiple boxes available. One of those boxes has been designated as editable for free text. However, I'm having difficulty loading a comprehensive list of recognized commands or keywords that can enhance the utility of this feature when exporting files. Are there specific terms like date or tempo that this box is programmed to recognize and utilize? So what the free text is going to allow you to do is, let's say, come in here. So let's say I have these particular files. and we're going to do our export audio mix down. So the free text is very powerful way of quickly, so say we want to do our exporting multiple files. We go to our naming scheme up here, and we could choose already our channel type, project name, counter. So at this point we could say free text. So free text, I could now just double click here and say, today's date. So let's say August 23rd, 2020, or August 22nd, 2023. Okay, so you double click on the free text value. So, here we could say, okay, I want to import, then I want the project name, and I want it, so you could have and we can see kind of a preview here. So we'll say, okay, the name will be, stereo out, August 23rd, 2022, and the project is untitled. So now I will export the file, and we will import and create audio tracks, and we'll say, let's export audio. So we do that. We'll have new audio tracks created, and at this point we could see that the name of the file includes our free text information. So really all you have to do is when you go to export the audio mix down is when you go to the naming scheme and you have free text, and you can put multiple free text in. We could just double click and type in whatever text that you want in a particular file, and then that text will automatically be included. So if you wanted to put in the date, the tempo, you could just you don't really have to program anything, just double click and type the text that you want. So if you say, okay, I want this to be, tempo is 100 BPM. Then when we do our export, we'll just choose our multiple files here. We'll do, instruments, our instrument tracks, say export audio. It's now going to just simply create those particular files with the name of the instrument, the date, and BPM. So just double click on the free text value, and then it will automatically carry over, and then you could just type in the particular value right there. All right, another question. I'm curious about the absence of an option for the AirPods Max headphones to function at a buffer size sample rate of 512. In Nuendo/Cubase, the buffer size appears to cap at 384 samples, limiting the utilization of Dolby Atmos features. Interestingly, this limitation doesn't extend to Logic Pro X. So I'm going to try to just pair my Galaxy Buds Pro, and I'm going to see what happens what buffer size. I don't have Apple AirPods Max, so let's get to my studio setup and let's switch it to my Samsung Bluetooth headphones. All right, so I'm going to switch that, and let's come over here and go to the control panel, and here just on my my Galaxy, they're not Apple AirPods Max. My Sony is kind of shows up the same way, but I just kind of pop my Galaxy Buds headphones, so they work at the different sample rates. Now, if you're concerned about doing this in conjunction with doing a Dolby Atmos mix, you realize that the Bluetooth headphones won't work for doing Atmos mixing because Bluetooth is going to be fixed to 44K. It doesn't do 48K support, I'm pretty sure. So and Dolby Atmos mixing is going to happen at at 48K. So I don't think that your AirPods Max will be a viable solution for mixing because it supports the wrong sample rate over Bluetooth. So, but it looks like even my Galaxy Pro buds immediately work at 512 buffer. So Cubase doesn't limit the buffer size. The buffer size is dictated by the actual audio device itself and not by Cubase. But if you're looking for the AirPods Max, again, I'm almost positive that all Bluetooth headphones don't do 48K, they do 44.1K. And for working with Dolby Atmos mixing, you're going to need 48K for that. So I think that would be more of the problems. All right. Okay, so question mailed in. When working with the drum editor's MIDI section and having already created a template drum map, I'm interested in whether there's a method to effectively eliminate or erase unused MIDI note key pitch lanes. Besides folding the parts that aren't in use by pitch, is there a technique to completely remove these unused lanes? This would greatly aid in streaming the drum editing process and optimizing the workspace. So I don't think that there is necessarily, just make sure I have my audio configured still. All right, so let's go look at the drum part. Let me just go to a different project here. Okay, so let's look at all right, I'll switch this. All right, so when we go to look at our drum editor, so I think getting rid of all of the lanes is bad, because let's say if you wanted to add a drum sound and it was gone, as you mentioned before, we could come over to here to just show sounds with events, and then you're only seeing the particular sounds with events. But there's always going to be, the potential for a situation of like, oh, I just wanted to double this snare with a hand clap and to get rid of all the notes. So we don't want to necessarily restrict all of the notes that are available to use. But I think you have the same kind of functional benefit, if we wanted to, if you don't want to see empty stuff, we could just come over here and only show the drum sounds with events with one mouse click. And I think that gets you to the same functional benefit without having to limit your possibility of deleting, because the notes are still there. It's like, even if you have notes on a piano, if you have a piano part, you may think you have all the notes, but maybe you want to add another note. Why restrict yourself with that? But I think maybe you can let me know if there's a functional difference for you to have just the particular notes that aren't in use to be filtered from view, but it seems like it's the same functional thing. All right, and I think we had a question about how to import a file from a pool. So let's come over here and drag it to a new track. So let's come over here. Let's go to my pool window, and I'll just say, so hit Control or Command P. Let's go to our pool window, and I think that as we do this, the dragging from the pool window won't necessarily, like if we drag it to an empty space, we could drag it to an existing track or to an empty space at the bottom, and that will create a track, but it doesn't, unlike the dragging from Media Bay over, sorry about that incredibly loud sample. Let's turn that down to kill. But if instead of just dragging a sample freely wherever you want from Media Bay, dragging from the pool, I think is going to be a little different. Let me just see if there's any other little things that, like, let's say, okay, I want to, but I don't think that there's any. Thing here that would automatically kind of add it into the project below a selected track. So I think that behavior from the pool will be functionally just slightly different than from the media bay. All right, so let's jump back to our live questions. Thanks again for all the great questions from everyone. Let me just jump back. All right. So we see, is there a way to randomly modulate ARP time within a set range? Okay. Okay, so let's come over. All right, so I'm just going to come over here. Let's get to our Apache. All right, so let's say we wanted to just come over here. So one of the things that you can do, and it may not be as, let's see, so I'm going to come here to the quick controls of this, and I'm just going to click on a quick learn here, and let's adjust our step size. Okay, so we've now learned that as our quick control. All right, and let me just switch my remote control here to, okay, we have focus quick controls. So as we play, you could have kind of, you could control that, but let's see if we can. So just move, as I move the fader up and down. You could do that, so if you wanted to just kind of automate it directly right there, you could do that. And let's see if we could assign, I don't think we could assign, I'm not sure if we could assign like an LFO to switch between particular ranges. Let me just take a look and see. Yeah, there's no. Let's see if we come here to MIDI inserts. We have auto LFO. I don't. If we could have that drive the. Here we could drive the value range. But let me just see if we could have this as a. So we could probably derive the so here we could probably maybe like have the arpeggiator if we're doing it internally. So let's say if we have the arpeggiator in the instrument. All right. So here we could say learn CC. So let's say, okay, and I'm going to go to my auto LFO that's on this track. Okay, so on my tempo scale, we're going to learn CC, and I have this set to let's say controller 10. I'll just have this. Okay, learn CC. Let's see if this will. So now we could have this automatically. Let's just set it to whole notes. And as we could have that modulated by the auto LFO. So we could have that set to particular ranges. And let me just make this a more obvious arpeggiator. So now as I would play a note, we could have the auto LFO change the arpeggiator within the particular instrument within specified ranges. And if we wanted that to be half as fast, now we can see that the auto LFO is just changing the different arpeggio amounts for that. So you could do stuff like that for within the instruments using the auto LFO plugin. So that's how you can kind of randomly modulate ARP time within a set range. All right, so we see from Roland stuff ask, hi Greg, how can I make sure Cubase Pro 12 always offers me all available colors for tracks, events, channels? I can often only see 14. I think the question got lost when I asked it on Friday. So sorry if I missed your question on Friday, but if you go to your project menu, go to project color setup. And then if you go to your presets, so you probably have 16 different colors. So here you could choose to have 32 colors and 4 tints. So you could have 128 colors that are available for you right there. And you could modify those particular colors as you see fit. So just again, go to your project menu to project colors setup, and not to the auto fade settings, but project color setup, and go to presets and just add more number of basic colors and more tints, and then At that point, once you've added more, they'll become available as you click here. Sorry for missing your question on Friday. Always wonderful to see Gerald Ely from Martinez, California. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have a question. Is there a way to colorize CC data lanes? For example, CC11 is yellow, etc. So they're not going to be kind of independently colorized. So if we come over and, we see our modulation data, it doesn't necessarily kind of carry over the colors. It's just going to be white for kind of easier contrast for editing and for kind of visual, like more obvious to see for contrast for the editing with the black background. So I don't know a way to colorize the CC data, but I'll pass it along as a feature. This is a great quote from Jazz Dude. It says, the more I get into Cubase, the more I understand what I didn't even expect to find. So, and John Koskian is looking for the insert raw talent feature. So maybe next version. And their great point, experience comes with curiosity, and talent will then make these many little features to great music. All right. All right, so you see values. Says, thanks, Greg. I'll write a support message to Steinberg. Thanks for the help. All right, so we have Yao Guang Teng. I'm sure I pronounced that wrong. Just sending a big heart. So thank you for that. All right, so Gerald Ely says, when exchanging files with Logic users, what should I be aware of, such as audio, MIDI, or timecode details? So, when in doubt, you'll always be successful, I found, if you make it really hard for someone else that you're interchanging with to mess up. So if you give them equal length audio files across the system so that every single file is the same length, it's really hard for someone to mess that up. Rendering, you could render all the MIDI data as audio. So if it just looks like, all of your audio files are just like one big block where everyone could import them and like they're all equal length like this, then, this is like a very common way, some people call it, making stems, and they have an equal length audio part of all files in a particular project. So if you do that, that will be easy. MIDI information isn't going to be included. So if you want someone to have the MIDI tracks, like if you rendered the MIDI tracks as audio, and if someone says, oh, I want to change the piano sound or an organ sound to something else that I have, generate a MIDI file separately for all your MIDI tracks and send, the audio files of just equal length audio files into MIDI files, so they have the option of being able to just, replace individual parts as necessary. But if you do that, that'll be easier for anyone running any other DAW to have that, it would be hard for them to mess it up. So, and that's always a good place to leave other people, and they'll, want to work with you more. If you're easy and you don't make their life hard. So. All right, wonderful to see Randy Lee on the live stream. Glad you can make it today. All right, so we see just a question, how to import a kick pattern. So if it's a kick pattern that's MIDI information, you could probably just come over, and usually if it's going to be designed to be interchanged between different programs, it'll be a standard MIDI file, so you could import the MIDI file directly into your project. So let me know if it's MIDI information, but if it's MIDI, all you'd have to do is simply just import a MIDI file, and a particular kick pattern would be there. Now, if it's going to be, if it's in another project, you know, what you could do is say, okay, I want to go to, like I have this project, I want to get this drum part from this project into this project, is you could just drag and drop events from one project into a completely different project if you want to. So if it's from within Cubase to like a Cubase project to a Cubase project, you can drag and drop. You could also come over here and just say, okay, while you're doing that, you could say, let's go to File, to Import, and choose Tracks from Project. And at that point, you can say, okay, I want to import this particular track from that project into a completely different project. So if you let me know if it's MIDI or audio, that would be helpful. Okay, so Gareth is hoping that everyone is learning tons of new stuff. All right, we see that Gerald Ely was able to miss a storm in California, but he had great golf weather, nice and breezy, so that's good. Michael Team says he's hurt his brain muscle, so you'll get it back. You're a smart guy. All right, so we see the Heartbreak Time Machine just says, I learn tons every stream. That's great. So we see Mark Chiambo ask, hi Greg, I noticed that if you transpose audio down to -12, then shuttle play, I get rid of the chipmunk effect. Is there a way I could do these two steps in this using a macro? Okay, so all right, so I'm not sure if we could transpose down. So let's say, so I guess we could, I'll just do it on a new project here. All right, I'll just throw a couple. All right, so say we have. All right, so let's say, I think if we go to processes, so say we do, so I'm not sure how you're doing the pitch shift, but let's say if we go down -12, I think we could save this as a preset. So let's say, okay. All right, so let's say if we save this as a favorite. Okay. All right, did it twice, so let me just. All right, so. All right, so let's see if we could recall that as a preset via key command. Maybe under process. Let me just take a look, see if we could. Okay, so if we come here, let's make it a favorite. So I think if we make this a favorite, let's see what. All right, so I'm going to make this. I'll just delete some of these. All right. Okay, so I'm going to undo that. Okay, so we'll have that as favorite one. So I'm going to come to key commands. So make a new macro. So let's get to shuttle play, I think. All right, so let's see if we do that. So I think that worked. Let's go over here and remove this and see what happens. So yeah, I think that worked. So give that a try. You know, save it as a favorite here. Then you could recall that from a particular, you know, you could recall that and trigger it from within a macro. So let me know if that kind of does what you want, Mark. So Gerald Ely says, thanks, Greg. You make file exchange sound easy. I'll bet I'll complicate it. So it's not too bad. Okay, so we see a question from Eric Fox. Why, when I make a 4-bar kick loop and try to change the tempo, the first kick of the loop is always losing the first transient? It sounds so weird. Is there any way to fix that? Thanks. All right, so let's go ahead and try to create it. All right, so let's add an instrument track. Let's do a little groove agent action. Okay, let's take that. Okay, so we'll just okay, so now all right, so now all right, so let's go ahead and render in place. So just get to our render settings. We'll keep it dry. Okay, and I had an added tail, so let me just undo the tail on that. All right, so all right, just make sure I'm having this. Sorry, my chat field jumped on me. Okay, so let's go ahead and this is going to be at 120 beats a minute. I will put it into musical mode. All right, and let me just go ahead and duplicate that a couple times, and I'll put my tempo to 100. We'll see if it sounds different coming up here.
A new day.
So it sounds fine to me, but let me know if you're doing a different approach or using a different instrument. But it sounds like everything's playing back kind of as expected here. Okay, so wonderful to see Michael Pierce on. Says he's hopes everyone's having a great week, and he's lurking this evening. He's prepping for a week of front of house at the West End tomorrow. Terrified Theater. All right, good luck with your theater gig. All right, so we see from Stephen, Greg, how can you set Cubase to a slave time for frames per second? So you could have, Cubase set to synchronize to timecode. So if we go to your transport menu, we'll come right over here. We'll activate external sync. But we want to tell Cubase where the synchronization is coming from. So we can say, okay, we want MIDI timecode, and then at this point we want our MIDI. We can say our source is going to be our MIDI timecode settings. The MIDI input is coming directly from wherever it's connected to the other computer. If you want to set the frame rate, if you go to your project settings, which you can go to project setup, or hit shift plus the letter S. Here you could set the SMPTE frame rate, so your timecode frame rates you could set there. And then once you have the external sync activated under transport, you have the correct definition here. You would need to properly lock and synchronize audio. You need word clock coming from the other computer to a digital input, so that the clocks can resolve. And you would go to the studio setup, select your device, and you would see under here clock source. You'd want to set it to the digital time input that you have from the other computer, and that way the audio will properly be synced and can resolve to itself. So that's how you can set up Cubase. So as soon as Cubase now sees timecode input, at that point it will automatically synchronize to the timecode coming from the other source. All right, so we see Mark Chiambo says, thanks, Greg. Yeah, that workaround is great for shuttle play. ×2 if playing. ×2 without the chipmunk effect on the next version of Cubase can be added. That'd be great. So, it could really depend on the particular voice, but one of the things that you could do if it's like for a voice that you don't want is just to, if you go to the inserts and go to the particular, because what's being affected is the formants of the voice, but go to the pitch shift plugin and go to pitch correct. So, it's just kind of the nature of the beast when you're going an octave that it could sound very chipmunk-like. And then you'll see under formants, you want to preserve the formants, and you could shift the formants of the audio. So I would try adjusting the formants here, and, and play around with that. That would be like the first thing I would do, is to just adjust the formants. It's kind of a long workaround to if you feel that it's kind of chipmunk like. But there's also for every one of those processes, try the different, you could also try the formant algorithms. So if it was on a particular voice, I would take the voice file and just simply come here and adjust it to formant pitch. And then as you would change the tempo, that way it would preserve the formants. So definitely try that. And there's probably options that are already in Cubase that could do that for you. John Costigan, I think, who did a lot of theater work, just wishing well to Michael Pierce for his project. All right, so you see that Gareth had to take off, so thanks for joining us, Gareth. Glad to have you on today. All right, so Yazian's just saying that it's MIDI, and I think this is for how to import, so again, just, if you have like a drum loop that's MIDI, so, if you have, Cubase has MIDI loops, so if you wanted to come here, let's say to drum and percussion, here we could just choose like different types of patterns. But any kind of drum pattern. So if you wanted that, you could just drag and drop that directly onto your project and have that automatically just line up. And if I tell Cubase not to be an external sync, that would help. So, MIDI files, MIDI loops, and a MIDI loop is kind of like a MIDI file that's routed to a particular VST instrument, and you could export MIDI loops, but, you could just drag and drop those elements right in if they're MIDI. So. All right, so we have a question from Alice. He says, hi Greg, couldn't find this in the Q&A database. My range in the pitch shift envelope only goes to 11 instead of 12 semitones. This happens in every algorithm. Is that a glitch? So let's go take a look. So, all right, so say we want to take our vocals here.
In the air.
All right, so I will take this and we'll hit F7 instead of F8. Let's go to our pitch shift. All right, so let's say like right here, I just said pitch shift settings, and let me just read. All right, and you mentioned in the envelope, so let me just set our range here. All right. So let's say I want to take this all down. Let's say we'll just do -12. All right. And we'll set our range here to 12. Okay. So now at this point, we'll process that file.
A new day.
So if I want to do that, so it looks, just coming here in the envelope, and I didn't do anything different. So let me see if time correction is checked. It's still -12. I think we can go, down 4 octaves, a range of, down -44 semitones if you need to. But let me know if I'm doing something differently than you, Alice. But it seems to kind of work for me. All right, it looks like Gareth might be in Liverpool, so hope you're doing well, Gareth, and thanks for joining us. All right. So we have Thomas says tuning in late and just saying hi to everyone. So thanks for joining us. All right, so we see from Steven, so if you're slaving Cubase to another app on the same PC, do you need a word clock? Just set slave and make sure correct frames per second and you're done. So you will need word clock. So just, frames per second won't work, and especially if you're doing, if you're having two different audio interfaces, realize that each of those computers has their own audio. Each program is going to have its own audio timing. So it's not just a matter of matching the frames per second. If you're doing just MIDI stuff, you can get by with MIDI timecode like that. But if there's any digital audio for that to properly synchronize, you'll need MIDI clock between. You'll need like a timecode clock source to be able to use. All right, wonderful to see Braxel checking in from Texas. Don't worry about being late. You just have to hit the like button immediately if you're late. That's the only thing. But we're so glad you made it today. All right, so we see Alice just saying, thanks for checking my up arrows grayed out as well. So must be something going wrong here. So I'll just take a look at this audio file again, and we'll come. And, if you could also, Alice, just let us know like which version, if you're running Cubase 12 or not. But it looks like that's kind of working as expected here. So in the pitch shift, or I'll just select this, I have range to match right there. So and I'm in 12.07, if that makes any difference for you, Alice. All right, we'll see if there's any more questions. I think I'm at the end of questions on the live stream here. We got through the ones that were sent in. Let's see if there's any others that come up. So Alice says, yeah, I'm in 12.07 running on Rosetta 2. So I think, I'm running it on, 1207 here. So on Monterey, but when I go to my Cubase, I think I'm on the latest version. I should be. I'll come over here. So 1207. So. Right. Sorry, I just have a call coming in. All right. All right, we'll see if there's more questions that sneak in. Just have a call coming in from normal live stream attendee, Jesse Carmichael. I'll have to give him a call back right after. All right, we'll just give it a couple minutes. It's usually about 30 seconds from when I talk to when everyone else is on. So we see Jazzu just is mentioned maybe it has the wrong algorithm for the estimated tape stop effect, but let me just see if I could recreate that. Let's see if time correction is turned off, but let's see. See if I switch any of these algorithms, if it switches it. Let but looks like it's all kind of functioning as expected here. All right. So we see from Michael Pierce, a quick one. When using a drum agent player in Groove Agent SE, can you still set multiple outputs for the individual drum channels? So it's going to be, you know, for the most part, yes. But like you may have toms kind of grouped together, and that's for kind of like the phase alignment in all the samples to be worked together. But if you wanted to break out a lot of different stuff, so let's say if I come to this project, we'll activate it. So I will just, so if we're here, and we open up the instrument, that when we go to our instrument here, we go to the mixer. It's done in the mixer in like the acoustic agent, and then you could send, but this may take the different kick snare, and then if you wanted to do, I think if we just kind of click, so this will kind of take like all the different snares and rim shots, and I think that there's a way to expand those out. But you could just kind of click right here. So give that a try, Michael Pierce. Okay. All right, so you see from Thomas, just says like a brick sidechain between two channels for crashing similar elements. Let me, okay, sorry, I just, all right, so Thomas asks, I use a compressor for sidechain pumping. How do I set a 100% full stop sidechain? All right, so let me just open up a different project here. Okay, so just once again, it says use compressor for sidechain pumping. How do I do a 100% full stop sidechain, like a brick wall sidechain between two channels for crashing similar or catching similar elements? So let's take a look at just kind of setting up a sidechain for people that aren't familiar with it. So I'll take this particular track here, and we have as an insert, we have our compressor. So, and what I want to do is to just activate sidechain, and let's set our sidechain source to this kick track. Okay, so without the compressor, how it's going to sound is, And now with the compressor enabled with sidechain from this kick. Okay, so so you want it like a brick wall sidechain between two channels. So how do I set 100% full stop? So, you might just have to play around, with the, with the attack and the release a bit. So on the compressor, so let's say, like if you have an exaggerated release, or if you want, so, it could be just, having kind of it like an exaggerated, like a longer release. So that, so try experimenting with the release of your compressor and let me know if that makes sense or if I'm misunderstanding. All right, so we see, sounds like Matt asked, can someone link me to the archive site that exists for these streams? There's a question I've asked before and couldn't stick around for the answer, but I don't remember the date. So try doing cubaseindex.com. So once again, cubaseindex.com. And if it's been covered, it's probably listed in there. Or, feel free to ask the question again. We'll be happy to try to answer it for you. So you see Michael Pierce's comment says, yes, thank you, Greg. That's great. Play around with it. It was handy for some clients with no drummer with them, but also hate click track. So yeah, I mean, Groove Agent's always just a great kind of inspirational click track with a groove to play with. And then you could always, add different variations and fills if you need to once the song evolves around a groove, which it kind of eventually does. So. Okay, so we see from Roger says, hi Greg, I use the auto panner to fix a left-right issue with my ID reference room correction, enabling the auto panner in flat default mode, reduce the volume for about 5 dB on Cubase Pro Windows. So let me just take a look at it here. And let's just set up a quick scenario and we'll just check with some test tones. Let's do new project. I think I have some test tones in one of my other projects. All right, so let's say here we have test tone. All right, so right now my test tone is at minus 12 dB. All right, so let me just get this set up. All right, so we look at our metering in the mix console here. So we'll see minus 12. I'll go ahead and just come over here to supervision. So we see minus 12 there. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's put the auto panner. All right, and see if there's any gain adjustments that are. All right, see a slight difference, like 2 dB, but let me just. Let me see if there's another panner mode for that. Maybe. Let's try just all right, so let's say we do a mix 6-2 plugin. So try the mix 6-2 plugin. And then you could just bring these down and just have the right channel and just the left channel. So maybe instead of the auto panner, Roger, try again. You'll see it under surround, and you'll see mix 6-2, and then that way you could just have the left and right channels, and then you could at that point just bring that down. So see if that would work for your situation that you're in. All right, so Benny asks, guest on the next Zoom. So I'll try to get someone set up. So our next Zoom meetup for people interested, that will be a week from today. So I'll try to get a guest lined up for that. So. So we see a question, can you sidechain a gate? I'll experiment more, but I always get some pumping, even if it's just a very small amount. I'll experiment some more. Thanks for answering. So I think that the gate plugins will allow you to have a sidechain. So let's see if we go back to the one project that had some. That was doing the sidechaining in. Thomas. So let's give it a shot. So it looks like there is sidechaining on it. So So you kind of play around with that, and here you have kind of also the hold. As well as release. So if that's the kind of effect you're going for, you may, maybe sidechaining with a gate will kind of get you a different approach. All right, so we see Michael Pierce says, the Zoom next week, he'll pile back up from London for it. Okay. Okay, so we see David Henson asks, says, hi, Greg. How can I synchronize with tempo by pressing the key C3 and Halion 7 with loop mode, but without using Flex Razor or a MIDI track? Okay, so just open up Halion 7 while you do this. Okay, so all right, so you see, how do you synchronize in key C3 and Halion 7 with loop mode, but without using the Flex Razor? So I'm not sure if it's like a loop that you want to do. Let me just so let's say if I'm here, and let's say if I'm not sure if it's all right, so let me just come over to all right, so now when I come here and we play, let me just undo that. I'll just do a different approach. So let's say we go to our mapping page here. So as we do this, all right, and get my computer back on so I can reread the question. Sorry about that. Okay, so you want to synchronize with tempo by pressing the C3 key in Halion. So I think that once we are, so if you wanted to synchronize to the tempo, like as you press the key here, I think we just need to, let's go to the sample editor, and I think if we go to, we need to basically put it into like audio warp mode. Okay, so go to all right, so go to the zone, and then you'll see when you go to mode here, you'll see audio warp, and then here we could just put it onto music, then whatever tempo. So this could automatically sync with the project tempo right there, whatever pitch. And if you want to put this into like spectral mode, so So as I change the tempo in my project, I think that this would automatically speed it up. So that way, that particular sample loop is matching the tempo. So let me know if that's what you wanted to do, David. All right, so you see from Thomas, I think this is in regards to sidechaining gate, says that this is perfect, thank you. So glad that got it figured out for you. Okay, so we see a question from Devil's Bow who asks, hi, all my audio sources in Windows are set to 80% volume. In Cubase 12 Pro on master, I'm clipping red, but when I export my tracks to WAV and playback the file with Winamp is quieter than other files. Okay, so when you have like your system sounds in Windows, it's kind of completely irrelevant to the gain structuring inside of Cubase. So that doesn't really matter. Now, when you go to mix, what's really critical is to make sure that you have kind of the gain structure of your speakers set correctly with, because we could have, so a lot of times what we will want to have is a separate monitoring volume that's not contingent upon the master fader. So if you go, to your studio and let's go to your audio connections, you want to make sure that we're using a control room. We're going to add a monitor. So here I have my main stereo outs or my Yamaha HS7s. When I go to my outputs, and this seems counterintuitive, if you don't do it, you want to make sure that this is set to not connected. Otherwise, you kind of hear the sound doubled up. You hear the sound twice, and that will kind of give you a false impression. So while we're playing like this particular project, I could adjust my monitoring volume here. And again, that's completely independent of the mixer. So what a lot of times people do is maybe have their mixer cranked up and they use the master fader as their volume control. So when we come here, we can say, as we do this, we mix, and this, if you're kind of adjusting your monitoring volume from the main, we want this as close to 0 as possible, and use this as the monitoring level, because as this is lower or higher, it's not going to affect the actual gain structure of the mix. So, at that point, so a lot of people try to maybe monitoring louder, and then they don't hear it clipping here, and then it's like, oh, it's not really, doesn't sound as loud as other projects. So try to get your gain in your master fader as close to 0 and kind of build your mix around there. Now, if you've done a mix down file, one thing that you could do that's really easy is let's go over here to export audio mix down, and I will just take this one particular file. I'm going to export it to make sure, okay, I have my left and right locators set. We're going to export the audio file. We'll have our audio mix down here. And one of the things that you could do is select the audio mixdown file, go to your audio menu to statistics, and this will give you an analysis of your particular file. So you can say, okay, what your average levels are here. Now, if you think that these are low, what you could do at that point is have that file selected. Like that's pretty much like pretty close to in the ballpark, maybe just a little hot. Like those particular statistics. So we look at it like I'm at minus, so let's say, my integrated loudness is minus 13.3 for a streaming service. I may want it to be minus 14. What you could do is just go to your processes. Let's have that file selected, and you could say, okay, I want to normalize to minus 14 LUFS. And now we could just change, or let's say this is for broadcast, I want it minus 23 LUFS, and that will process the file to kind of the overall loudness that you'd want for different delivery services. So make sure that you're not using your master fader for volume control, and that you're using kind of the control room as the monitoring level, and that kind of clears it up for a lot of people. But if you rendered a file, you could always normalize it and still get more gain out of it if needed. All right, so wonderful to see Jeff Sabelski. We've missed having you and seeing you on. We hope you're well from Chico, California. All right, and always so great to see Tim Weinheimer as well. Glad you can make it today. Great to see you on from Mission Viejo, California. All right, so we see Devil's Bow just says, perfect, thank you. So, all right, we'll see if there's other questions that sneak in. If not, we could wrap up a little early. Thank you for all the great questions. I hope that everyone has learned a tip or trick or two. And hope that everyone has, and if you have learned something new, make sure you hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that as well. All right. And there's usually about a 20 to 30 second delay. All right, great to see Bruce Bruton checking in from Simi Valley, California. Hope you fared well with the storm. All right, so we see Alex, how do I see both time signature and minutes and seconds in transport? So maybe I'm thinking maybe the bars and beats. All right, so we can see that we see our primary time display here, and we have this set to bars and beats, but let's say we want to see bars and beats and seconds. We see these three little dots, extend those over, and now we could say, okay, as we move to different seconds, at that point, so I think we just come. I'll show it on the standalone transport bar here. Okay, so once we see kind of like our bars and beats, we could now just kind of see seconds as well. So just kind of take that little space here, and you might just have to extend it over to the right to see the bars and beats and seconds. So you'll see that kind of at the bottom. So try doing that. I don't think that, we could see the time signature indicated here, but here we see bars and beats a second. We can see bars, beats, seconds, and time signature and tempo. All right, so we see Gerald Ely says, thanks, Greg, for all you do. So I'm just glad to be able to help people. All right, and you see Michael Pierce is going to be sneaking off. We look forward to seeing you on the next Zoom meetup next week. All right. So we see, ooh, boy, that made sense. Thanks a bunch. All right. All right, we see Jeff Sabelski's already greeted back with 1 gallon of Dreamsicle ice cream. So it's very nice of Michael Teens. To see Jazz Dude says, still I want F1 not to connect to the internet. So I think you have to talk to Microsoft about that. So that one might be out of our control. So. All right, we'll see. Just wait just a minute more, see if there's any other questions that come in. If not, we'll wrap up just a little bit early. And I'm so grateful that everyone spent part of their morning, evening, afternoon learning more about Cubase. And I hope that everyone has learned some new tips and tricks. And we usually do these live streams on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So. We'll give it another 20 seconds or so if we don't get more questions. See Alice just saying, thanks, Greg. So thanks for being on the live stream. Hope to see you on the future ones. All right, so I guess we are through with the questions. I want everyone to stay safe and healthy. And we will see everyone back on Friday starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. If you have questions that you want to send in advance, please send them to clubcubase@steinberg.de. I want to thank everyone again for spending time on the live stream. And if you did learn something new, make sure that you do hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that. And we will see everyone back on Friday. Everyone have a wonderful week, and we'll see you then. Take care. Goodbye.